Now let's dig into the details of TCP, starting with the header. The header is a bit more complicated and complex compared to UDP, as you can imagine. What you see is we have the two ports, source port, destination port. Now we have two fields for sequence number and acknowledgement number. I will go into the details later on. So those two fields. And then we have a number of flags. I will explain the flags as well. Flags indicating what is the meaning of this packet. We have data packets, we have packets indicating the connection setup, connection release. Header length, window size very important when it comes to flow control. Again, a checksum, urgent pointer, that's something special that goes together with this urgent bit, some options, and then the data. What is quite important to remember, TCP is a byte stream oriented protocol, thus we count bytes of data, not segments. So segments, these are the packets on layer 4. Remember, the application gives bytes to the lower layer, to TCP, and TCP then segments this stream of bytes into the segments and transmits the segments. But the sequence number and acknowledgement numbers, this is where you actually count bytes. Window, very important for the flow control. Here a receiver can indicate the number of bytes the receiver is willing to accept. That's quite interesting. I will explain this in detail. So overall, we have a 20-byte header, we have some options, and we can have up to this 65,000 something data bytes. So what is this header? Source destination, nothing new like in UDP, but as I said, sequence number. Now this is something new. We have these 32-bit numbers, quite long, and this is exactly where we implement the sliding window protocol. So for the sequence number and acknowledgement numbers, we count the bytes. And now, by definition, the acknowledgement number indicates the next expected byte. So it's not the last byte I've received, but the next accepted byte, thus acknowledging all prior bytes. That's the idea. So if I, for example, have a sequence number of 4711, that means the byte with the number 4711 is the next I expect, and I acknowledge all other bytes like 4710, 47.9, and so on. The sequence numbers, they don't have to start at 0, so typically we pick a random value. So this helps us to avoiding mix-up with any late segments. So we pick any number. And the sequence number now indicates the first data byte in a segment. So that's the first data byte of a segment, that's the sequence number. Sequence number and acknowledgement numbers, you see, they have their place in the header, and we can do a piggybacking. That means that we send the acknowledgement together with the data segment if there is any data. So we can send a pure acknowledgement packet, or we send a data packet where we send the acknowledgement field appropriately. The header length, so that is similar to IP, the indication of the length of the header, because we have these options. And the header is between 20 and 60 bytes, so we have a maximum of 40 byte option. Window size, that's, as I said, used for the flow control. And this window indicates how many bytes the receiver can accept. And this tells the sender how many bytes may I send at the same time without overloading the receiver. So that's the idea. So this reflects the buffer size on receiver side. And the flow control now uses, as I will show you, uses this window size to adapt the maximum number of bytes I can send. This also influenced by another window, as I will explain. It's not only this window. We have a certain number of flags, and the flags, whoa, they can do a lot. So first of all, as you will learn, we have two flags used for congestion control. Congestion control, as you remember, that's how to control the flow inside the network to avoid overloading the network. So here we have the 2 bits, one ECE, that's the early congestion notification, that's the mechanism, echo. So the receiver can send back this ECN echo to a sender and inform the sender that it received an IP packet with this ECN set in the IP header. Whoa! So we have a layer 3 mechanism that now triggers the return of a flag on layer 4. So you see, well, here we mix somehow those layers. So what does it mean? I won't go into details, but for now, if a router sees that there is some congestion, it can send these bits in the IP header and give the system, the receiver in this case, an early congestion notification. The receiver reads this layer 3 information and returns then to the sender this ECN echo, sets this flag. And the sender itself can then answer with CWR, congestion window reduced, meaning that I reduced my congestion window, another window, as you will learn, as the response for this set ECE flag. So you see that layer 3 can trigger a exchange of flags on layer 4 because layer 3 indicates, oh, there is something going on in the network. And this is what layer 3 experience. So the routers, they experience a congestion. But the problem, the sources of the congestion, these are the layer 4 senders. I will come back to this when we discuss congestion control. We have some more flags. Urgent. This urgent flag, that signals, oh, we have special important data now. For example, if you transmit a stream of bytes and then you press Ctrl+C, you try to abort. And then no matter what the layer 4, sometimes, as I will explain, waits before it actually hands over the data to the higher layer. Urgent, this bit signals, now please deliver data immediately. We have acknowledgement bit. This is set if there is an acknowledgement. So typically all the packets after the initial connection setup message have this bit set because typically you always have an acknowledgement. And there is a push bit. Push bit, that means we don't wait for further data. So we don't wait if we receive some more bytes. We immediately now transmit data. So we don't wait. So push, that push through data. Reset. So if something crashes, so reset, that causes some problems. So that's not the normal way to stop a connection. This is when you set the fin bit, as you will learn. And we have a synchronized bit that's used for connection establishment. So the TCP packet expresses using special bits the meaning of a packet. I will come back when I explain the functions to these individual bits. What else do we have in the header? We have an urgent pointer. If the urgent flag is set, then it says where in the data field is special urgent data, so with a certain offset. We have different options. So many of the options are today historical. Remember, the protocol is quite old. They're obsolete, some are experimental. You will also find some experimental bits, flags used in the header. What I showed you is just a set of flags as defined in the standard. So options, we can have a window scale option. So that means we can scale the window, not only counting bytes, but then multiples. So we scale it. We can use different retransmission schemes, selective repeat, go back again, as I will explain. We can indicate maximum segment sizes, timestamp, timeout, authentication, and so on and so on. So I will come back to those options as well. And then with the checksum field, checksumming works as it works in IP and UDP. On UDP, I told you I will explain it here. So now this is the slide. How does it work? And this is really strange. I mean, you know how we do checksumming on layer 2. Layer 2 with the CRC. So basically, we use this polynomial, this generator polynomial, and then we do this polynomial division, so using this special kind of a register and calculating a reminder, etc. But the result is we append a checksum, the CRC, at the end of our frame. That's what we do on layer 2. Here, it's a bit different. So the checksum here, well, we can again argue, well, layer 2 already protects, yes, but if something happens on higher layers, layer 2 cannot protect it. Does this happen quite often? Well, to be honest, no. But okay, how does it work? Checksumming here. So checksumming, that's basically using a so-called pseudo header. What does it mean? You have your normal packet, your normal TCP packet, and in the case of using IP version 4, okay, well, TCP, we are now talking about TCP, no, yes, but depending on IP, you see the tight coupling of layer 4 and 3, that's not the ideal thing, but that's how it's done. So here we have our TCP normal packet with a TCP header and all the data. And in case of IP version 4, we actually use a pseudo header, place it in front of the TCP header. And this pseudo header consists of source IP address, destination IP address, some percentage set to 0, then protocol is 6, that's for TCP, and the length of the TCP segment. And then we compute the checksum based on pseudo header and the normal header and the data. So checksumming comprises pseudo header, regular header of TCP, TCP data. The checksum field of the regular TCP header is set to 0 because we don't know it. We're just calculating it. And then actually we perform the checksumming itself. It's calculating the sum of all the 16-bit words in the segment, including pseudo header, and then we take the one complement. Why this is done this way? Well, remember, back in the 70s, we didn't have these powerful computers, polynomial division, etc. So this was a way calculating a checksum the computers of that time could handle. Okay, what does the receiver do? The receiver basically does exactly the same, places pseudo header in front of the received TCP header and data, and then executes the same algorithm. And in case of IP version 6, right hand side, well, it looks basically the same, but now remember, with now 32 bits, see, these are 32 bits, we have 4 times this 32 bits, so this is then our source address, and also 4 times here 32 bits. That's our destination address, length of TCP segment, and then a lot more zeros and the number 6 for the protocol. But basically the calculation of the checksum is the same. So this is the header of TCP. Okay, so now let's start. How does TCP work? How do we set up connections? And then you will see how we use those fields in the header. Okay, so typical situation, we have a client and we have a server, and the server waits for connections. So typically it's in a certain state, as I will show you with a finite state machine. So it waits listening on a port. So the server listens. Then the client will be active, sending a TCP packet. And now we say the client sends a SYN packet. What does it mean? That's a normal TCP packet with the SYN flag set. So you have the SYN flag is 1 now. This means, oh, we have a TCP SYN packet. So the client, now this is our connect operation, and you have to know the IP address, you have to know the port number of the server, and then sends over this SYN packet. So that's the idea. Then the server listens at a certain port, we have to know the port, port 80 for example for the web, and returns with a SYN ACK packet. SYN ACK, that's the answer for this SYN. So SYN ACK, that means we have the SYN flag set and the ACK flag set. And now it's important, as I showed you with this more general case of three-way handshake, that this acknowledgement now acknowledges this packet because it says everything is fine up to sequence number X, so byte X. And please, now I'm ready, I can receive byte X plus 1. So that's the idea. And the server itself picks a random sequence number, could be anything. That's the idea. So now the client knows everything is fine. The server accepted my request, acknowledged it, the acknowledgement number is okay, now X plus 1. So we don't have to send data. So now these are basically control packets, but these are regular TCP packets. And now I can return to finalize the three-way handshake. I return after SYN ACK, a packet with acknowledgement set, and I expect Y plus 1, and this acknowledges exactly this packet. And now my sequence number is X plus 1, and that's exactly what the server expects. And here I can already include data if I want. I don't have to, but I can already include data. So now the connection is established. There's always only one connection per socket pair. So IP address 1, port 1, IP address 2, port 2. That's the idea. So I can already send some data with this third step of my three-way handshake. I don't have to. So now we have the connection, and now we start transmitting data. This is full duplex. It doesn't matter who established the connection. It's always a full duplex bidirectional connection in TCP. And I can now start. So we have a byte stream coming in from the application, on the client side or the server side, and TCP now segments the byte stream into these segments. And typical, there are some sizes like 1500, etc. We try to avoid IP fragmentation. Remember, that was a problem when I cannot transmit a packet over a link with certain limits of the link. There's certain minimum I have to accept, these 556 byte segments. And typically, it works as follows, that I send some data, as shown here. I acknowledge, in this case, when the client sends data, it also acknowledges that all data from the server with sequence number, let's say 198 and 199 and 200, they are all fine. So I received everything. And the next byte I expect as a client is the byte with 201. My sequence number now is 101, and that basically is the number of the first of, in this example, these 10 bytes. So byte number 1, that's sequence number 101. So I confirm and send data with one packet. I will come back to timeouts and how this works in detail, but for now, timeout, if I don't get an acknowledgement within a certain time, then I have to retransmit. But in our case, the server simply acknowledges the data and says, okay, look, this packet now has the sequence number as expected, and I acknowledge with 111 that I received exactly these 10 bytes, starting at 101 and going up to byte with the number 110, because 111 is the next byte I expect. And then I continue, send the next 50 byte in this example, setting sequence number, acknowledgement number, and so on. So that's how it works. And if something goes wrong, we have these two typical procedures how I can repeat, go back in. We looked into this already on layer 2. Go back in, that means if something happens, I always go back to the byte where up to this byte everything was okay, and then repeat everything, or selective repeat, I only repeat the missing parts. Selective repeat is much better, but it requires a bit more memory management. Remember, sequence numbers are not for segments, but for bytes of data. Connection termination, that was this two-army problem thing. So termination, we consider our full duplex connection as two simplest connections. So both sides have to say it's over now. So in our example, the server sends a FIN packet. That is a TCP packet where the FIN flag is set. Again, this packet also has a sequence number and acknowledges data. So that's the idea. If I get the confirmation, then this direction is switched off. The opposite direction remains open. So data, the client in our case can still send data. So now we have some kind of a half-open connection. And so in this case, the client could still send data. But here we see the client also says, FIN, it's over. So acknowledging this, the packet from the server. So it's uncommon to have this half-open connection, but in theory it's possible. The server also acknowledges this FIN packet from the client side, and that's it, basically. In the end, we use the timers. You learned two-army problem. We cannot really be 100% sure that we received all the packets. So what happens if this packet is destroyed? So the server in this case cannot be sure that really everything is over. This is why we have certain timers. So in real systems, we freeze the connection for some time. We do not reuse the connection parameters to avoid any conflicts. And after, for example, 2 minutes, we release everything, because then we can be pretty sure that there are no more packets somewhere in the internet traveling towards one of the destinations. Okay, use the timers, avoid packet loss. And in the end, we have the finite state machine, certain life cycle of clients and of servers. So what does it mean? So the typical client starts in the state closed, and then the application says, hey, I want to open a connection to a certain server, for example, and this triggers the sending of a SYN packet, so a TCP packet with a SYN flag set. Then we're in a state SYN send, waiting for SYN ACK. Then we send the ACK, and this is our three-way handshake. So this is the first step, second step, third step, and then the connection is established. In the state established, we exchange the data. If the client application now closes the connection, we send a FIN, we wait, we receive the acknowledgement, that's fine. If someone just says, okay, it's nice that you want to stop, but now the connection is still half open. We need a FIN packet from the other side, which we acknowledge, then everything is over. Then we wait for some time, for example, 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, whatever, and then everything is really closed. On the server side, well, the server starts and we listen. We listen at a certain port. For example, port 80, the web server waits. Then we receive a SYN from a client. We answer, so that was our step 1. That's a step 2. That's our step 3, meaning now we have our connection established. We exchange our data in both directions. And now, in our case, the client sent the FIN. So this is our FIN we sent. we send back the ACK, certain state, close wait. We send a fin, receive the acknowledgement, and that's it. So these are the two life cycles of TCP clients and servers. We can combine this, and now this is the typical finite state machine of TCP. Looks confusing. It's not really that confusing. So if you are a client, you can follow the path. We started with closed. Then the application says, please connect to a certain server. That's our step 1 of the three-way handshake. We go over to this. And then hopefully the server answers with a SYN-ACK. We send the acknowledgement and we are in the established state. Yes, things may go wrong, etc. We can always go back to a closed state, but that's the normal way. So we go this way and we are in the established phase. Servers typically start when you start up the server in this listen mode, and then the clients try to connect, and you also go into the established state. So the state machine of the server also goes into established. And now it depends which side closes the connection. So application chooses close, and that's the active close. So for example, as I showed, the client can do this and can now go through the states to the closed state. Or if you have the passive close, so the server in our example, we go this right path and go into the closed state. So that's the idea. There are some more cases that could happen, so unusual events, even strange things like a simultaneous open. So it could be the case that both sides at the same time open the connection, resulting in only one connection. Because as I said, there can be only one connection with this quadruple, this socket pair. So that's the idea. Okay, that was the finite state machine. And to make it complete, this is the explanation of the different states. You can go through. We learned established. This is where you can duplex mode, exchange bidirectional our data. We have different other states for servers. Typically, they wait in these listen states. Okay, so some questions. We have sequence numbers, acknowledgement numbers. What do they indicate? What do you count? What do they mean? We also have in a header a window size. What is this used for? This window, I will come back to the mechanism, what we do there, but what is this used for? And why can we scale the window? Yeah, this is something to do with what the window actually means. Use Wireshark and check on your own for the flags. So when are they set? Which flags do you see? Maybe you see the EC flag? Well, try it out yourself. What is the motivation for a checksum? I said that we have quite powerful layer 2 checksum. So what could be cases where we need such a checksum? And again, when you use Wireshark, follow the connection management, follow the flow of this ping pong of the packets. There are some special features, mechanisms in Wireshark that makes it a bit more easy to follow the path of a TCP connection.